talk for a little while about faith. Faith. Help me say faith. I'm afraid that too many people have the wrong concept of faith. Too many people make all kinds of gestures, statements, and say, I have faith. Faith is not a blind leap. In other words, you just jump after something and you say, I'm doing it by faith. Faith is not lassoing the neck of God and telling him what our desires are. Faith is not a blind leap, but faith is not a blank check. That sometimes I've seen people just do stuff and expect God to bag them. That's not faith, that's foolish. It's not a blind leap, it's not a blank check. Faith is not a bad choice, because faith, the Bible says, that the earth was formed and created on faith. Faith is actually a description of who we are. You see, before we were called Christians, we were called believers. The same word for believe, belief, pistos, pistules. In the Greek, we were called believers. Just our very name separate us from other folk. Because when someone see you, they ought to see a believer. And because you are a believer, your conduct is different. That whatever happened in your life, it doesn't cause you to have a sour face. It doesn't cause you to walk with your head down. Regardless of the weight that is upon you, you can look forward and move forward because you are a believer. Faith is the description of us. We are believers. It is the duty of us. It is not just our description, it is our duty. Because the Bible calls and commands us to believe. The greatest sin you can commit is not adultery. It is not murder. It is not homosexuality. It is not stealing. It's the sin of unbelief. That when you fail to believe, that's the unpardonable sin. Faith is our description. It is our duty, but it is also our delight. Because when you live a faith life, you enjoy the life of faith. Because when you live a life of faith, even at your deathbed, you can say like Job, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Upon all the days of my appointed time, I'll wait until my change come. Because you live a life of faith, you can recite Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. Because you live a life of faith, you know where your help comes from. Because Psalms 121 verse 1 says, I lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from which cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord. It is important for us to know who we are. We don't just have faith, we live by faith. The Bible said the just shall live by faith. That's why you can be unemployed and not worried. Because you know God may not meet your needs where you want it, but you know he'll meet them where you need it. Because we are people of faith. My goodness, if you didn't have faith, as wicked as this world is, and as cruel as the city of Memphis is, you'd walk everywhere looking behind, trying to see who's going to take you out first. But because we are faith walkers, we can walk even in the midst of a crack house and tell the crackheads, you don't need crack, you need the rock. And the rock is Jesus. The text says in Ephesians, in Philippians, or in Hebrew chapter 11, it says our faith. It says now faith is. Now faith is. Now in the interlinear Bible, that's the Bible that take the English translation and translate it into the Greek language. It reads like this: is now faith. Is now faith. Now normally when you see faith in many instances, you expect it to be a verb because it's action. It demonstrates action. Faith has legs on it. If there's no legs on faith, it's not much faith. But when you see faith in the Bible, normally it is a noun instead of a verb. The same thing, belief, look like to me it would be a noun, but it is a verb. Belief is a verb. Faith is noun. The Greek word is the same word, pistos. It's a faith is the substance. What is substance? Is a compound word. This word for substance, hupa. The first part means under. Histemi is the second part of the word. It means stand. Something you stand upon. Faith is something underneath you that you stand upon. The King James Version said he called it substance. It has three schools of thoughts for the word substance. First school is it is a legal term. It comes from the idea of a person buying a home, that once the home is paid for, you get your deed. But most of us, before we get the deed, we call it our home. We've asked any of us in here, if you're a homeowner, you say, that's my home. It's not yours. Your name is on the deed, but you don't have the deed yet. And if you miss several notes, you will discover it's not yours, that it belongs to the mortgage holder. But we call it that. But whenever you finish paying it finally and get the deed, that is the substance of what you really have. It is a legal term, but it is a scientific term. Scientific because the Jewish race, they had a unique way of getting their juice from the grapes. They would get that juice and they would find places and get people to stand in containers and keep marching around the container until they would push and mash all of the liquids out of the grapes. And once they would mash it out, the juice would go down through the container into other containers, but there was a residue that was still around the hole. And when they saw the residue, they knew that some juice had gone through it, meant that it had substance. The third word for it was what they call a Christology for the word substance, meaning this, that we have never seen God. And God knew that we hadn't seen him, so he had to bring somebody for us to see. Because Moses wanted to look at him. God said, Moses, it's going to create a problem if I let you see me, because if you see me, you got to die. And so when God passed Moses, he turned and let God see the hinder part of him. Talk to me, somebody. But Jesus said, listen, God, I can help you out a little bit. Make me a body that will flow blood and water. And I'll come down and I'll die for mankind, preach from Ray, and when they see me, they see you. And that's why in John 1:18 it said, and Jesus was in the bosom of the Father, that he is the only begotten. Help me say only begotten. He is the only, shout it one more time, he is the only begotten of the Father. Monogenes in the text for the word only begotten mean he's one of a kind. That you will never find anybody like Jesus but Jesus. He's one of a kind in his birth. Nobody was born like Jesus. He's one of a kind in his life. Nobody lived like Jesus. He's one of a kind in his miracle. Nobody could wrought miracles like Jesus. He's one of a kind in his teaching. Nobody could teach like Jesus. He's one of his kind in his death. Nobody died like Jesus. He's one of a kind in his resurrection. Didn't nobody get up like Jesus but Jesus. He's one of a kind. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. You see the word hope. Help me say hope for. Lepezo in the Greek for the word hope for, it means this. It has the idea of something that is real, something that you can look forward to. Faith is something to look forward to. And the Bible says that if we're going to survive, we must be people of faith. Then the Bible bring in the focus characters in Hebrew 11. And notice he said, by faith, Enoch. I like it because the Bible always plays Enoch with two other characters. Whenever you see Enoch, you see Abel and you see Noah. Genesis chapter 4, it talks about Abel. Genesis 5 is Enoch. Genesis 6 is Noah. In Hebrew 11:4 by faith Abel. Hebrews 11:5 by faith Enoch. Hebrew 11:7 by faith Noah. Why did he place these three characters together? Because all three bring to the table something that would be beneficial for us. Whenever you see Abel, you see a person that come to worship God. When you say Enoch, you see a person come to walk with God. Whenever you see Noah, you see a person coming to work for God. You see, we need worshipers. Shout worshipers. That's why we came here today to worship God, not to see Frank Ray, not just to hear the choir sing, not just to show off what we got, not just because this is a new year. We came to worship. And whenever you come to worship, we should come to worship him. In him we live. In him we move. And in him we have our being. Anytime a person can take nothing and make something, he deserves our worship. Anytime a person can bring us from darkness to the marvelous light, he deserves to be worshiped. Anytime a person can scoop the sea out in the hem of his garment, and he deserves our worship. Anytime God can keep the sun in its place, the moon where it ought to be. Talk to me, somebody. Keep the stars moving around in its proper place. He deserves our worship. Anytime God can keep, every time a child is born, He's unique in it. Give every child 263 bones, 600 muscles, 970 miles of blood vessels, 32 feet of intestines, 32 teeth in his mouth, eyes like cameras. Every time they flash, take the picture to send it to the brain to be developed. He deserved to be worshiped. Anytime God, I don't care about the 5 billion people on the planet, he always seemed to have enough vegetation growing. He always have enough cows on the planet to keep us eating beef, meat. Always have enough hogs to keep us eating chitlins and neck bones. And talk to me, somebody. Yeah, always have enough fish in the sea to keep us eating the proper food. He deserves our worship. And even when you can't take care of yourself, he seems to step in when you get laid off your job. And when you get through with you got a testimony, and you'll say, I've been young, and now I'm old, but I have never seen the righteous forsaken or the seed begging bread. He deserves our worship. Do I have a witness? We worship him. Abel said you ought to worship him. Noah said, on the other hand, you ought to work. If God has done something for us, we ought to do something for him. And not only should we work, the work should be a significant work. If you are detailed in what you do on your job, you ought to be much more detailed on what you do for God. If on your job you make sure that you do what you do so that it will be right, so that your boss will approve of what you're doing, how much more should you do it for our real boss? Come on, talk to me. If you show up on time for God, for your work, shouldn't you do it for God? I wish I had some hit, because I don't know about y'all. I don't want God being late when I call him. If I'm struggling with a heart attack or stroke, and I say, Lord, help me right now, I don't want God to be late coming. I need him to show up right now. I'm headed for a head-on collision, and I've lost control of my car. I ain't got time to be talking about our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, and all that. All I can say is, help. Do I have a witness? But then is that person that walked with God. But he walked with God by faith. Do we have any faith walkers in the house this morning? I mean somebody that walked by faith, don't know where you're going, but you know he knows. Don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but you know he holds your tomorrow. Don't know how life is going to be, but you know God is still in business. Do I have a witness? I'm glad he used this person called Enoch, because Enoch had several things going for him. Now, if you notice the life of Enoch, he didn't start off with God as being a teenager, as an early age person. Enoch was 65 years of age when he started committing his life to the Lord. Ain't it something? He was an old man before he decided to surrender to the Lord. I guess what I'm saying, you can be old and still have chance. You can be almost over the hill and still come to the Lord and say, Lord, I know I wasted most of my life, but I'm going to give you the best I have right now. I'm going to give you what I can give you while I'm still living. While there's life, there's hope. And when you surrender to the Lord and give him your best while you can, my goodness, stand back and watch God work in your life. Preach from Ray. He came, and then the text said, after he begot Methuselah, he walked with God, meaning he waited until he started his family. And then he started walking with God. Does anybody here know that if you're going to raise a family, you sure enough need the Lord's help? Don't try in the 21st century trying to raise no children without God. You need all the help from God you can get, because they will run you literally crazy. They'll have you sitting somewhere in a little playpen twiddling with little rattlers. But if you got God on your side, you got somebody that will keep you calm when you want to lose your temper. Talk to me, somebody. You got somebody that can keep you. The Bible says, and he walked with God after he begot Methuselah. What does it mean to walk with God? It means several things, and I'm going to let y'all go. Number one, it means harmony. Because two can't walk together except they agree. Now, what you mean harmony? Here it is. It doesn't mean that God agree with me. It means that I agree with God. We got too many people, even when there's faith move, we want to do something and want God to agree with us. But instead of trying to get God to agree with you, you agree with God. And see, what I discovered, if God said it in the scripture, is already settled. You ain't got to even pray over it if God has already said it. If God says something, if you believe what God says it, it's settled already. It means agree with God. But walking also means going places. Do you know when you walk with God, you will not remain the same. You won't have the same old attitude. You won't have the same old disposition. You won't have the same old wicked ways. When you walk with God, you study going higher and higher. Help me say, and higher and higher. It's amazing how much we put faith in things and how little faith we put in him. We'll leave Memphis in a raggedy car. It's already quitting on you in time. And take off and try to drive to Chicago. And here's what I say, I got faith, it's gonna make it. Y'all don't like me. You'll have a job, preach Reverend Ray, you ain't been on it but 3 months. And you walk around in the used car lot to try to get a car. It's gonna take you 3 years to pay for it. You ain't been on the job but 6 months. You know what you said? I got faith. Believe that they're gonna let me work until I get this car paid for. Talk to me, somebody. You buy a house that costs $1,000 a month, and you ain't making but $200. Y'all don't like me. See, I don't know how God gonna do it, but I got faith. I can pay for this. We have faith in ourselves. Talk to me. We have faith in the job, faith in our car, but no faith in God. Anybody here know that these other things might let you down? But God is a God that you can count on. He's a God you can depend on. He's a God you can trust in. Talk to me, somebody. Just shake one hand and say, neighbor, that's why I'm sitting here this morning, because my faith is in God. I don't know about y'all, but you got to get to the place where you can't depend on other folk. That's what got you where you are now, depending on somebody else. You signed on the dotted line for somebody else. Co-signed, they told you they was going to pay the note. Oh, I don't know why I'm going here. So they was going to pay it if you just sign it. You ain't got to worry about it. I'm going to pay it. They missed the first month. They missed the second month. You know the thing, the creditor's calling you. You said, this ought to already be paid for. They're missing the third month. And then when you talk to them about it, they act like you talking Greek. Y'all don't hear me. But you have to understand, it's